Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 8th of August 2025. Military aid update, quite a bit to go through. There's been a few days since I last did one of these. We're going to start with the European Council, the EU Council, approving 3.056 billion euros in support for Ukraine under the Ukraine facility, according to Ukrainian PM Syridenko. And I don't know if this is to do with hearing that they were putting on pause some of the money that they were giving to Ukraine due to reforms not having yet been accomplished. I don't know whether they've released this as a result of the change of the laws recently or whether this is another tranche. I don't know. But it's worth hearing this from Joseph Borrell. Timothy Milovanov here summarizes what's going on. So Joseph Borrell says, and he was formerly in charge of at the European Union, I think responsible for getting um, assistance to Ukraine. Since I left, there's been no new military aid to Ukraine from the EU. The 6.6 billion euros from the European Peace Facility is blocked by Hungary. It's the end of this instrument. Everything will have to be bilateral now, meaning from one nation to another, not from the EU centrally. That's the EU Observer reporting. Borrell, obviously really angry with what Hungary are doing, and there was thought to be like plan B and plan C if Hungary did this, but Hungary seemed to have succeeded in stopping this particular program from being able to get weapons and assistance to Ukraine. It's really, really annoying. Um, just there's quite a lot about that interview to go through, but I won't do that here. Um, okay, Dutch Minister of Defence has visited a training ground in the UK where Ukrainian soldiers are undergoing combat training according to NATO standards. So this will be Operation Interflex that other nations are assisting with. So you've got Breckelmans, the Defence Secretary for the Netherlands there, uh, obviously seeing how Dutch, I presume, Dutch trainers are helping with Operation Interflex, and seeing how they are helping Ukrainians there. Um, okay, in the UK. And indeed, then Ruben Breckelman states Ukraine urgently needs more air defense and ammunition. The Netherlands is the first NATO country to provide a package of 500 million euros in American weapon systems, including Patriot components and missiles, so that Ukraine can counter Russian aggression also for the rest of Europe. So, really good news from the Netherlands there. Sweden, Denmark, and Norway will jointly provide $500 million to fund US weapons for Ukraine under the PURL Priority Ukraine Requirements List program, which ensures rapid delivery of key American defense systems, especially for boosting Ukraine's air defense. And this is what the US has come up with rather than aiding Ukraine themselves. They are providing the priority Ukraine requirements list, which is a list of stuff that you can buy off the US and they'll expedite it. But again, it's about selling stuff to other people to give to Ukraine. Speed of delivery of Patriot systems to Ukraine depends on how soon the US provides European countries with their replacements, as we already know. So that is there is still going to be, I think, in terms of Patriot systems provision, a bit of a logjam there, a bit of a bottleneck. Now, I've already talked to you about this before, but we heard that a German team managed to repair a Patriot missile system radar, the radar component of it, that was badly damaged and was thought to be a write off, a total loss because of the amount of damage. And they ended up working 16 hours a day from Monday to Saturday. It's unsure whether it was just 1 week they spent or whether there were multiple weeks. But anyway, they worked really hard and actually got it back up together again. And now it has been used. So in July, the radar unit was delivered back to Ukraine and is already operational. Just last week, the first Russian target was intercepted by utilizing this very radar unit. I asked German Aid to Ukraine, who had this thread, how long it took them in total. And he said, well, technically the wording is they worked 16-hour shifts from Monday to Saturday. And in July, we delivered the radar back to Ukraine. So you can interpret that as just 6 days to get it repaired, or you could say multiple groups of 6 days. It's unsure, but they were not thinking they could repair it. That's really good news. The Germans in this case, or people outside of the US, can repair such a complex piece of kit that is an American piece of kit. So excellent stuff there. Now, Finland has donated 31 special vehicles to Ukraine for rescue services in 2025, primarily fire engines and ambulances. And from January to July, they also sent 32 humanitarian shipments to Ukraine's civil services, including generators and hospital equipment. So thank you to Finland there. Ukraine wants to buy weapons from Poland for 120 million euros on credit. Kyiv plans to purchase proven Perun systems and Crab self-propelled guns, the AHS Crab. There can never be too many weapons in a warring country, says Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha. So looking to procure through buying on credit weapons from Poland. Now, talking about buying weapons or getting weapons, well, this is actually both, I think. Uh, Actually, no, this is probably weapons that have already been either bought but probably procured from US. I don't know if it's PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority. I'm not quite sure of this. Anyway, what am I talking about? The Pentagon is considering redirecting weapons intended for Ukraine to American stockpiles. According to CNN, the Pentagon has prepared a memorandum according to which some of the weapons and equipment originally intended, so I don't know if that means bought or provided for Ukraine. So there were two funding streams: USAI funding, which is buying stuff from American manufacturers to get to Ukraine, putting orders in. And then there was PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority, just going through the warehouses and taking stuff, often older equipment that was nearing obsolescence or whatever, and getting that to Ukraine. So I don't know which type of procurement this is referring to, but they are rerouting stuff, or they're laying out the framework to reroute equipment back to American stocks. So, according to CNN, the Pentagon has prepared a memorandum according to which some of the weapons and equipment originally intended for Ukraine could be returned to the US arsenals. There's obviously a modal there. New Pentagon policy could divert weapons built for Ukraine back to US stockpiles. The step would make up for the shortfall in American stockpiles, but would potentially deprive Kyiv of billions of dollars of previously promised military aid. The Pentagon remains concerned that the supply of critical systems would undermine the US defense capability. John Ridge, who's a bit of a missiles expert, says, well, let's read the original memo, or the reporting on the memo here. The Colby memo, and this will refer to Elbridge Colby, who is not someone I'm a big fan of in any way, shape, or form. He's the deputy. Is he the deputy for DoD policy? But anyway, the Colby memo, however, remains in effect. So remember when the Americans previously put a halt on a bunch of weapons that were going to Ukraine, and they included some things like Hellfire missiles and stuff that the US wasn't really short of, didn't really particularly need in the way that Ukraine maybe need them. And some of the decisions to halt weapons were kind of questioned as not making any sense, that the Americans would actually need those particular weapons. So the Colby memo, however, remains in effect and contains a previously unreported provision that allows the Pentagon to divert weapons back into US stockpiles that were built explicitly for Ukraine under a congressionally funded program known as the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, USAI. While sources said weapons don't appear to have been diverted yet, the provision could rob Ukraine of billions of dollars worth of US-made material expected to be delivered over the coming months and years. So John Ridge says, aside from being stupid and morally reprehensible, this directly contravenes the intent of Congress. If congressional appropriators had any spine, they would refuse to consider the administration's funding priorities for the DoD until the OUSDP rescinds the memo. So a lot of people not happy with this. This is certainly doing the rounds at the moment. Okay, so Zelensky said he had a productive phone call with Trump recently, focused on ending sanctions and drone production. So he said that Ukraine has already prepared a draft agreement on drones and is ready to finalize what he called one of the strongest agreements this could be. So still hope that there's going to be some funding coming from the US for drones from Ukraine, because Ukraine are now at the forefront of drone manufacturing and development. There is talk about, like right now, as in on the socials, that there's been an agreement to hold a meeting. That there are, I mean, all sorts going on at the moment. That one could be forgiven for thinking that there could be a swift kind of ceasefire on the cards, but it's going to come down to the demands that Russia make on Ukraine and whether they are realistic at all. And this will have an effect on weapons provision for Ukraine going forward, of course. The US has provided the sale of M777 howitzer repair and support services to Ukraine for $104 million, according to the Pentagon. The sale and transportation and logistics services for $99.5 million has also been approved. So double sort of thing there. Transportation consolidation services in support of security assistance programs and equipment repair services and long-term sustainment support for the M777 155mm howitzers. Again, it's the US selling stuff there. Azerbaijan has launched a new line of serial production of artillery shells that will be sent to Ukraine, according to Visegrad. Always take what they claim with a pinch of salt. I don't really like using them as a source, but I've not seen this elsewhere. Both 122mm and 152mm shells will be produced, and the participation of Turkish and Bulgarian companies. Bulgaria was at one point during the war responsible for a third of Ukraine's ammunition provision. They still make 152mm stuff, Soviet era stuff, so they might help Azerbaijan start making shells that can be used by Ukraine. Estonia's, and this is a sad bit of news, annoying bit of news, Estonia's top Ukraine aid charity leader has been charged with embezzling over 450,000 euros. So prosecutors say Johanna Maria Letme uh, signed fake logistics deals and double paid Ukrainian partners despite the aid reaching Ukraine. So there's obviously some sort of fraud and corruption going on there, certainly starting in Estonia, and that obviously needs to be weeded out as much as possible. So first, I think clear bit of footage of a Ukrainian Mirage 2005F fighter jet in service with the Ukrainian Air Force here, and you can see I think it's just returned from the front. So I don't know if those are pylons on the bottom that launch certain. I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough, but interesting to see the first really clear pictures of Mirage 2000 in um, in the Ukrainian Air Force there. We hear now, and this goes back to the whole issue between Europe and the US, and Europe feeling that the US is not a reliable partner anymore under the Trump administration. And with with Trump's position on both NATO and generally as an ally, and sort of being all over the shop on Ukraine, uh, many Europeans have been getting nervous about relying on American tech and weaponry. And Spain has now dropped plans, apparently, to buy F-35 fighter jets due to that shift in defense spending priorities, wanting to spend more on European-made equipment They've budgeted 6.25 billion for new jets. This is according to El País, but they are going to, I think, go for some Eurofighter Typhoons possibly, and then concentrate on the FCAS, which is a sixth generation project between Germany, Spain, and France. It's not the Tempest, which is UK, Italy, Japan. I don't know who else. But that won't be ready till 2040. It's having loads of issues with, I think, Dassault and the Germans not getting on with each other, or is it Dassault and Airbus that are part of it not getting on with each other? Uh, but anyway, Spain are going in that direction rather than relying on American tech there. And then here we have news in a similar sort of vein that the US is about to admit it can't build Australian submarines. So AUKUS came along as the Australia, UK, US submarine agreement that gazumped effectively what Australia was going to do. Australia was going to buy French submarines. Then we got together with the UK, the Americans, and Australians got together to agree something that would stimulate both manufacturing, but also be secure with the Five Eyes kind of thing. Um, and moving away from reliance on France there from an Australian point of view, and it would lead to, I think, as a security agreement, Australia being really important in the Indo-Pacific area. Anyway, the end result was that AUKUS has been cast into quite a lot of doubt with Trump coming into power. So the US is about to admit it can't build Australian submarines. The US will say it cannot build the submarines it has promised to Australia. That's a conclusion from backroom briefings coming out of the Pentagon. Rather disingenuously, they partially blame the UK for not being able to deliver any either, when we were never going to. And Australia and the UK were happily looking for the next generation SSN. So these are submarines X. They will build together next decade. It was the Americans who offered the prospect of a 3 to 5 Virginia class. Now Australian, sorry, I'm not sure if I've said that correctly. Now Australia has to refurbish the already old Collins class and look to buy intermediate AIP submarines from potentially Japan. The reality of Americans' industrial failure is the core of this problem. It's nothing to do with the UK in any way. America can't manage its shipyards, its budgets, its training, its staff retention. The whole operation is an abysmal failure. Now Australia and the UK will have to pick up the pieces while America stands in the corner looking ashamed at its own failure. You would think, I'll bet when the report is published, they will blame anyone but themselves. Perhaps the French would like to sell them some again at increased prices. So, I mean, this is all a bit controversial, a bit embarrassing, a bit of a disaster. American shipbuilding is often called into question because it's set against, say, Chinese shipbuilding in both, tech and sheer scale. Anyway, let's go on to Ukrainian news for their own indigenous industry. So we're going to start with Ukrainian aviation is moving to NATO standards. Denis Shmyhal has said he's now the Minister for Defense, the Defense Minister. He presented a roadmap. The goal of the roadmap is to strengthen Ukraine's capabilities, use aviation during joint operations and operations within the framework of NATO activities, inflict effective defeat on the enemy during the current aggression, and prevent the enemy's advance and contain it in the future. So it'll be interesting in seeing his roadmap. So all these things carry on, even though there may well be, negotiations that bring about a ceasefire fairly soon, or maybe not soon, as we've seen previously. French Tixelis and Ukrainian military-industrial complex will jointly produce a mine-resistant ambush protection armored vehicle. So I don't know whether that be localized production in France or in Ukraine, but you're seeing more and more of this, and obviously the Ukrainians have a great deal of experience and therefore valuable feedback for manufacturing. You would think. Ukraine has developed the Bagnet interceptor drone to counter Russian attack drones such as Shahed and Gerber. The interceptor drone is capable of operating at an altitude of up to 5 kilometers and a range reaches 40 kilometers. So that is going to be another really useful component of their defense against Shaheds, particularly, and one might think the new jet Shaheds that we're hearing a lot about For the first time in Ukraine, the Shaheds jet interceptor Mangust drone has been presented. So I've talked to you about this one previously. So that is another a drone too, fairly similar in design. As you see, quite a few of these are vertical takeoff drones that that look quite similar, with these sort of four wings that stick out the side. Now, Ukraine has turned a ground robot into a helicopter killer. The 28th Mechanized Brigade mounted an Igla missile system on a remote controlled ground vehicle to hit low flying targets from cover. It's already downed a Russian helicopter, according to United 24. Wow. I wonder when that was. So engineers from the 28th Brigade built the system themselves, a remote controlled Igla launcher with a custom targeting module. Soldiers fire from cover, steering the robots and locking targets without exposing themselves to FPV drones. The robot crosses through rough terrain with the launcher mounted on top. Photos show it moving through brush, compact, mobile, and built for quick repositioning near the front. Before, soldiers fired Iglas from trenches, but Russian FPV drones now patrol skies over infantry, making it dangerous to stand or aim. The robot solves this. Operators stay hidden while scanning the air, avoiding detection and reacting faster than manual crews. The 28th Brigade used the system in combat and confirmed it shot down at least one Russian helicopter. They've launched a fundraiser to build 10 more units. Brigade personnel will assemble them in-house to scale quickly. So that's the sort of way that Ukrainians do things, isn't it? And here we have Ukrainian developers introducing a new combat ground drone, the Zmi droid. So many of these new sorts of drones are hitting the front lines or the armed forces. The developers note that the Zmi droid 12.7 has armor, is resistant to anti-personnel mines, and is able to withstand several hits from enemy FPV drones. It is a silent electric motor, a range of up to 50 kilometers, and a traction force of up to 700 kilograms. It is able to move off-road, in particular over swamps, sand, snow, stones, and overcome smaller water obstacles. So loads of images of that drone looking pretty cool, it has to be said. And big set of wheels on them too. So there you go. Oops, I've just now completely lost my place there. Right. Then we go on to something I was talking about this morning, which was a Ukrainian ground drone, a UGV launching strike drones. And we are seeing here one that can, I think, uh, launch, is it 6 drones? Yeah, 3 or maybe 4, maybe 8 drones on each of those sort of launching pylons. And then I presume it acts as a repeater as well for the signal with that large antenna there. Um, but yeah, so that's good news uh, for the Ukrainians. We've got a Russian variant of this that doesn't look quite as, yeah. They've got 6 on there, but I don't know if it can take 8, 6 or 8. We'll come to the Russian one later. A modified Z-137 Agro Turbo, armed with 2 R-73 air-to-air missiles, here is on a combat mission. This is a crop duster aeroplane, propeller aeroplane that has been repurposed to shoot down drones. And I saw Andrew Perpetua talk this morning about how, like, he was suggesting this in 2022, and people were gaslighting him and whatnot, and yeah, saying how ridiculous it was. And now, of course, it's these planes are finding their use. Now, Ukraine's Delta battlefield management system. So this is the system that they use. You have on these screens all over command and control centers, and they can have live feeds from all the drones anywhere on the front line, and they can coordinate attacks. It's become this amazing bit of tech that they're trying to actually sell to NATO forces. Ukraine's Delta battlefield management system, the tech used to defend Kiev and sink Russia's Black Sea fleet, is now going army wide. It now features AI, runs on phones, links drone app ops, and hits 2,000 plus targets daily. So I should probably go through that Euromaidan Press article to get to deliver some more of that information to you guys at some point. But it's really been an important development. That now Ukraine plans to become a world leader in AI technology by 2030 with the launch of its AI factory. Key components include cutting edge hardware such as GPU clusters and data centers, comprehensive software infrastructure, and access to quality training data. So that is pretty actually something I've been talking about previously, which is that there needs to be a silver lining for Ukraine in terms of this war. So the very dark cloud that this war is has allowed Ukraine to become world leaders in, say, drones, right? Drone production and development and innovation. And AI might be something that they can, or the application, certain applications of AI might also be something that they can become world leaders at, to come out of this war with something positive that they can sell back to the world and whatnot. Right, okay, now on to the last section, the Russian section. Right. So in the Russian section, we have Indian-made components have been found in Russian Iranian Shahed drones, according to Hindustan Times. Ukraine raised the issue with India and the EU, prompting Indian officials to warn electronics makers about international restrictions. That is really, really frustrating, isn't it? Well, it's not just India, it's China, obviously, as we know. Ukraine has shot down 2 new Russian Shahed type drones. 2 new drones were shot down by Ukrainian forces this week, and they were packed with Chinese technology, including flight controllers and navigation systems from a single company. That is going to be a bone of contention between the Ukrainians and Chinese. The recently downed Russia's newest Delta drones are advanced threats carrying 15-kilogram warheads that can switch between reconnaissance and strike missions. These drones are built with Chinese components, letting Russia mass produce them cheaply. Really, really annoying. And in fact, here we have a Grand 3 drone, a new jet drone with commercially available Chinese engines there that you can see. So the Chinese really heavily involved in Russia's war now, with so many components provided by the Chinese. Now, Russia's also introduced the Veles 10.dr FPV drone with additional guidance to the source of radiation to combat trench electronic warfare. So this is kind of like a harm missile that will seek out radiation coming from a radar unit of a surface-to-air missile system. It looks like they've produced, or at least they're claiming to have produced, a drone that does a similar thing. The 4-element antenna array is located on the front of the improvised cylinder, and I guess it can hunt out electronic warfare sources, radar sources, radiation sources, and then hit them as a result. Um, uh, as we come towards the end here, Russians attempt to disguise their Supercam reconnaissance drone as a bird to protect against Ukrainian FPV drones. I'm not sure that will have any effect on protecting that drone. But anyway, they've tried it. Here's a Russian prototype of the similar one to the Ukrainian, although those 4 small wheels, I don't think are. Basically, this is a really crap drone with a UGV drone with just 2 posts sticking out of it that you can take off FPVs from. I don't know if this acts as a repeater. It certainly looks like the poor cousin to the Ukrainian version earlier. But, whenever one side comes up with a new thing, the other side isn't far behind. So, a Russian prototype UGV carrier for radio FPVs called Argus, shown at a military exhibition. The suggested uses are to deploy the UGV and then fly the FPVs into ambush positions, as in the video, or launch the FPVs in quick succession for a mass strike. But I don't know if they have, there's any kind of repeater ability there at all. And as Russia sought to ratchet up military production for the war in Ukraine, a state-owned explosives manufacturer circumvented Western sanctions by purchasing equipment made by Germany's Siemens from a middleman that imports technology from China. And that's going to be annoying for anyone, trying to implement these sanctions, when it seems so easy for companies to be able to get their goods to Russia. And it might well be that Siemens has no knowledge of this, though. The acquisition of the Siemens equipment needed to automate machinery in the Biysk Oleum factory, BOZ, in southern Siberia was made via a Russian intermediary that sources industrial technology from Chinese wholesalers and resellers, and that's always been a problem. If you are selling your widgets and you're not allowed to sell your widgets directly to Russia, then you sell them to someone else who sells them to someone else who sells them to someone else in another country who sells them to someone else in another country. Like, how can I, as a manufacturer, stop that from being able to take place? And with that last person then selling it to Russia, how can I stop that from happening? It's really, I presume it's quite challenging, and that's why massive companies like Siemens are, uh, Russia are able to get hold of their tech and hardware and whatnot. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Please remember, by going to atpgeo.com/donate, that we are still doing a fundraiser. We're just coming up to finishing the fundraiser. I think I've said tomorrow night. $20 gets you a ticket. So the more tickets you get, the more chance you have of winning. To a ticket for the raffle, and the moment we've raised $12,669. There are three prizes. There's a down Russian drone. There's a goodie pack from Jigger's Paw with, I think, flags and patches and sign flags, and there's also a piece of art, a choice of four, for the one of four that fuses modern and traditional Ukrainian art from an art house in Lviv. So please help out. More The more you donate, the more tickets you'll get into the raffle, and then we'll do a live raffle, uh, a live raffle. I don't know what you call it. Find out who the winners are probably when I get back from holiday, and that'll be fantastic. So please go to atpgeo.com/donate. Fabulous. Anyway, in the meantime, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.